All right. You want to talk about Sean Combs? Now that's a deep dive I can get behind.
Mm,
You know him as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Just Diddy.
yeah,
This guy has reinvented himself more times than we can count.
it's true.
But beyond the name changes and the larger-than-life persona,
Sure.
there's a story here of resilience, ambition,
Yeah.
and a hustle that took him from Harlem to a hip-hop empire.
And it's a story that I think really begins with understanding the environment that shaped him.
Okay.
Born in Harlem in 1969,
Okay.
Combs' childhood wasn't easy. His father, allegedly involved in the drug trade, was murdered when Combs was only 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the impact of that kind of loss, that early exposure to the harsh realities of street life.
Yeah, it's almost hard to fathom, right?
Yeah.
And yet you see this drive in him, even from a young age. Didn't he excel in school?
He did. He went on to attend Howard University,
Wow.
one of the most prestigious historically black colleges in the country.
Right.
It's a testament to his ambition, his desire to rise above his circumstances.
Okay, so we're talking about a kid who's seen the streets,
Right.
but he's also got the brains to get into Howard.
Absolutely.
What was he studying there? Law? Medicine? Did someone hand him a microphone and say, you're going to be a star?
He actually went to Howard for business.
Oh, wow.
But you're right, to pick up on that entrepreneurial spirit, it was already there.
Right.
Stories from his college days tell of a young Combs already hustling, promoting parties, making connections.
Yeah.
He had that drive, that charisma, even back then.
So it wasn't just about textbooks and lectures for him. He was already applying what he was learning, testing the waters, right?
Absolutely. And while he eventually left Howard to pursue music full-time, those years at Howard provided valuable groundwork, a foundation for the empire he would build.
So no straight line to stardom then, but this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He lands an internship at Uptown Records.
Uptown, yep.
What was it like back then in the early 90s in the music industry?
The music industry was going through a seismic shift.
Okay.
Hip-hop was on the rise, challenging the status quo,
Right.
and Uptown Records was at the forefront of this movement.
Wow.
This wasn't just a job for Combs, it was his masterclass.
Yeah.
He learned the ropes, but more importantly, he started to develop his own vision.
And it wasn't just about learning the business side, was it?
Right.
This is where he really hones his ear for talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As an A&R executive,
Yeah.
essentially the person responsible for finding and developing new artists,
Right.
Combs had a level of influence that's hard to overstate.
Wow.
He was shaping the sound of R&B and hip-hop.
Right.
This is where he discovers and signs both Mary J. Blige and Joe Daichi.
Talk about a power move.
Yeah.
Those two were absolute giants in the making.
Huge. Yeah.
It's like he had this uncanny ability to spot not just talent, but star power.
He could see the potential, the raw talent,
Yeah.
and he knew how to nurture it, how to package it for the world.
Right.
And this all leads to a pivotal moment, not just in Combs' career, but in the history of hip-hop,
Okay.
the birth of Bad Boy Records. Bad Boy Records.
Bad Boy Records.
1993.
1993. It wasn't just a label, it was a statement.
It was a moment.
What was it about Bad Boy that made it such a face in the industry?
Combs understood that hip-hop was more than music.
Okay.
It was a cultural movement, a lifestyle.
All right.
Bad Boy tapped into that energy.
Yeah.
It was about image, attitude, and an unapologetic embrace of hip-hop's entrepreneurial spirit.
Right, right.
Think about the artists he brought in. Biggie, of course.
Of course.
But also Lil' Kim, Mace, Total. They weren't just musicians, they were trendsetters.
Oh, yeah.
They were larger than life.
And speaking of trendsetters, we can't talk about Bad Boy without talking about the notorious B.I.G.
Right.
This partnership was legendary, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Combs saw in Biggie a once-in-a-generation talent. And Biggie, in turn, found in Combs a mentor and a champion.
Right.
You could draw a direct line from their collaboration to the explosion of hip-hop onto the mainstream.
Yeah, their stories were so intertwined, both coming from tough backgrounds, finding success,
Right?
and then facing tragedy.
Yeah.
When Biggie was murdered in 1997, it was a huge loss.
It was.
Not just for the music world, but for Combs on a personal level, you know?
Absolutely. And it's in the wake of that loss that we see another side of Combs' talent.
Okay.
He channels his grief into what would become one of the most iconic tribute songs of all time.
Right.
I'll be missing you.
I'll be missing you. I remember hearing that song for the first time. It was everywhere, on the radio,
Everywhere.
in the clubs,
Oh, yeah.
blasting out of car windows.
It was inescapable.
It wasn't just a hip-hop song. Right.
It transcended genres, even connected with people on a deeply emotional level.
It was a cultural moment.
For sure.
It topped the charts globally, won a Grammy Award,
Wow.
and solidified Combs' own place as an artist.
Because let's not forget, he wasn't just the guy behind the scenes, Can't Nobody Hold Me Down,
Yeah.
Bad Boy for Life. Those were hits.
Big hits.
He had that musical touch, that ability to craft an anthem.
He understood what worked, and he wasn't afraid to put himself out there.
And here's where we see his ambition really taking off.
Okay.
He launches Sean John,
Right.
his own line of high-end menswear,
Yep.
and then there's Ciroc Vodka, which, let's be real, became synonymous with a certain lifestyle.
Oh, absolutely. It was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
It's aspirational. What's remarkable is that he was doing this in the late 90s, early 2000s,
Right.
long before celebrity-backed brands became the norm.
He was way ahead of the curve.
He was a pioneer,
Absolutely.
recognizing the power of his own image and influence.
He understood branding before branding was a thing.
It's like he had this Midas touch,
Yeah.
taking everything he touched, music, fashion, beverages,
Right.
and turning it to gold.
He had the magic touch.
He did, and he did it all while navigating the turbulent waters of the music industry,
Right.
a world rife with competition, pressure,
For sure.
and, let's be frank, a darker side that often lurks beneath the glamour.
That's the reality.
Yeah, and this is where the narrative takes a turn, right?
Yeah.
Because alongside the triumphs, the hit records, the business deals, there's this shadow that starts to fall over Combs' career. It's like we're seeing two sides of the same coin, this incredible success story,
Right.
but then this darker, more troubling narrative that starts to emerge.
Yeah, and that's the complexity
Right.
we're grappling with when we talk about Sean Combs. It's impossible to ignore the controversies,
Right.
the legal battles, and the accusations that have, unfortunately, become a part of his story.
Let's talk about those controversies. I remember the incident at that New York City nightclub in 1999.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a shooting?
Yes, 3 people were injured in the shooting,
Wow.
and it became a major news story, drawing attention to the often volatile world Combs inhabited.
Yeah, it felt like everyone was talking about it. This wasn't just a tabloid story. It was a serious legal battle that shined a light on some of the darker aspects of the music industry.
Absolutely. And while Combs was eventually acquitted of all charges,
Right.
the trial exposed the pressures, the rivalries, and the potential for violence that existed within the hip-hop scene at the time.
Right. And then, of course, there was the whole East Coast, West Coast rivalry,
Oh, right.
which seemed to escalate to dangerous levels.
It was at a very tense time.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about music. It was about territory, respect,
Right.
and the immense financial stakes involved in the rapidly growing hip-hop industry.
Right. It felt like things were on a knife's edge during those years.
Yeah.
And tragically, it culminated in the murders of both Biggie and Tupac Shakur within a year of each other.
It's true. 2 of hip-hop's brightest stars gone way too soon.
It makes you wonder about the price of success, the weight of the empire he was building, and the toll it might have taken.
Right, and as if those earlier controversies weren't enough, in recent years, a whole new wave of accusations has surfaced,
Right.
painting a deeply troubling picture of Combs' behavior off stage and away from the cameras.
Yeah, these are serious allegations, and we need to address them directly. We're talking about accusations of sexual assault,
Right.
harassment,
Yes.
and even human trafficking and exploitation.
Multiple individuals have come forward with these accusations,
Right.
including Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie, who filed a lawsuit in 2023 detailing horrific abuse.
Oh, wow.
These allegations paint a disturbing pattern of behavior.
And it all came to a head in 2024 when Combs was arrested after over 100 people came forward with similar stories.
It's important to remember that at this point, he hasn't been convicted of any crimes related to these accusations.
Okay.
But the sheer volume of allegations, the consistency of the stories, it's impossible to ignore.
So where does this leave us? How do we reconcile the music mogul, the cultural icon, with these incredibly serious accusations?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's a question we have to ask not just about Sean Combs, but about anyone in a position of power and influence.
Right.
Can we separate the art from the artist?
Right.
Does success excuse harmful behavior?
These aren't easy questions.
They're not.
And there are no simple answers.
Right.
It's a lot to unpack, and it's okay to feel conflicted. We came in here ready to explore an incredible career,
Absolutely.
and we've ended up in a much more challenging, much more nuanced space.
And that's the nature of a deep dive.
Right.
It's about going beyond the surface,
Right.
confronting the complexities, and engaging in these difficult but necessary conversations.
Combs' story is still being written, his legacy far from settled.
Right.
But one thing's for sure, it's a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, accountability, and the price of success.
And it reminds us that behind every carefully curated persona,
Yeah.
there's a human being capable of both great and terrible things.
It's a lot to think about. We'll leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.